Have you ever wanted to make bread but you were afraid to try? Using yeast scares you? You're not alone. That happens to everybody. Everybody that ever decided they were going to make bread was afraid of using the yeast, but it's really not hard and it's not magic. And today I'm going to show you how we do that. What we're going to do is, this is 1 cup, 216 grams. I'm using a scale today, by the way, of water that is about 100 degrees. You can go anywhere from about 95 degrees to 110 or 15. Then we add our yeast, which in this case is 1 packet, 7 grams. And after we stir it up just a little bit, we're going to set this aside for about 5 minutes or maybe 10 minutes so that it has a chance to proof. And I'll show you what that means in a few minutes. And you will see that this yeast is easier than you think. Because like I said, I should have put the sugar in it, but it's going to work just fine without doing that. We'll set that aside. We start with 3.5 cups of flour. In this case, it's all-purpose flour, but you could just as easily use bread flour, and you probably get a little higher loaf if you do use bread flour. I don't have any. So 3.5 cups of flour. To that, we're going to add 3 tablespoons or 50 grams. We're just going to add that to our flour. Now I did sift the flour. I don't know if it's going to make any difference, but this time I did sift it. To the flour, we're going to add 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. And as I've shown you before, I cover my salt here after I measure it because it is so humid here in Puerto Rico that salt just grabs all the moisture out of the air in a hurry, and it's just impossible to get out of your little measuring bowl. You need a kind of neutral oil for this, so I'm using a vegetable oil. You could use any light oil. Add the oil to the flour mixture, and then we whisk that around a little bit. This isn't critical that you do this part here, but I just like to stir things up as I'm going. I've always kind of been one to stir things up. I've had trouble in school a lot because of that. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes and you can see the yeast has gotten foamy. It would have gotten a little more foamy if I put the sugar in it, but it'll work just absolutely fine. And what we're going to do now is we're going to dump the yeast into our dry mix, and we're going to take our spatula and make sure we get all of the yeast. And then we're going to dump 1 egg in, which I have previously beaten up a little bit and it at room temperature. It's kind of critical for the yeast to work really well that we try to keep all our ingredients warm, which is easily accomplished in Puerto Rico. It's probably about 90 in my kitchen right now. And then we're just going to stir this up until most of the ingredients are incorporated. There'll probably be some powder at the bottom, but we're going to mix it by hand in a couple of minutes here. I don't like to rush right into that because I'm not real fond of stickiness on my fingers. But at this point, that's what we're going to do. Alright, so we're going to start mixing it up by hand so that we can get the last tidbits of flour to mix in. This is going to make 1 loaf of bread. Bread recipes are all pretty similar, but this particular recipe I got off of Feast and Farm website. I saw her on YouTube and I enjoyed her channel, and the bread looked like it was going to be what we needed for this video, so here we are. Alright, now this has formed a ball. So what we're going to do now is take it out of the bowl, Put it on our counter, and I'm going to take my centering tape off here. And then we're going to knead it. And some people are pretty apprehensive about kneading, but it's not tough. You just kind of push it away with your hand, and then you roll it back over itself, push it away again, and then I turn it, and then do the same thing. And it might help to put a little flour on your surface because sometimes it gets kind of sticky. So I have a little flour here, and we'll just put that out. You don't want to go too heavy on the extra flour though, because you can make your bread dry. But it does help keep it from sticking to things. As you can see, I'm just rolling it away from myself and pushing it, turning it, folding it over itself, pushing it, pushing it. And we're going to do this for a lot longer time than you're going to see on camera, because this is going to be 8 to 10 minutes of doing this. You don't have to squash this down thin either. You just kind of fold it over itself, like I said, roll it, but you notice I'm still leaving it about 1.5 inches thick or so, because I'm just rolling it to release the gluten in it and make it stretchy. The kneading process intimidates a lot of people, but if you do it, you will find that it's actually fairly relaxing. It's kind of enjoyable, actually. You can do this with a stand mixer, and I have a stand mixer, but I don't like making bread with it. I have always found that I couldn't tell when the dough was at its proper stages, so I prefer to do it by hand. And as I've said, it's quite relaxing. So it's something that's not hard to do, it's relaxing, and it's quiet. Yeah, stand mixer's not really quiet, so I much prefer doing it this way. And time passes quicker than you think when you're doing this. This is very soft. Okay, let's see if it'll stretch. In theory, I should be able to get it thin enough to see through. It's just about perfect. It rolls very easily at this point, except it wants to stick a little. But you don't need much effort to push it. So we have a nice ball. It has been about 8 or 9 minutes. And then in our clean bowl, we are going to put a little bit of oil, which you can use cooking spray to do this as well. And my bread is kind of in the way at this point, so we're going to have to move it a little bit. You can see that it sticks and pulls. I take a piece of paper towel and wipe that oil all around the bowl because we don't want our bread sticking in there. And then we're going to take our dough, put it in the bowl, and roll it around a little bit to cover it with oil. Pretty much for the same reason, and also because we don't want it to dry out. Once it's in the bowl like that, then we just take our clean cover. I think I'm going to use plastic wrap today. It is pretty humid and I don't want it to affect our bread dough. I go through about as much plastic wrap as I do paper towels, and my wife says I use way too many paper towels. There, I'm just going to further protect it with this towel. And that's it. That's going to sit there now for an hour or two until it's doubled in size. And once it is doubled in size, then we'll punch it down, portion it, roll it into a ball, a loaf, and then we'll go from there to put it in the pan, rise it again, And finally, bacon. We just need to lightly grease up a loaf pan. And then we're going to bring our dough over, which has risen a lot. And it's double its size at least. And then we're just going to punch it down, which is really just kind of slap it here and there. So we'll punch it down. And we'll bring it out of the bowl. Now we're just going to make a loaf out of it. It's about as big as our loaf pan. And we're going to put it in the pan. Nice and neat, as you can see. It's going to be a pretty unique shaped loaf of bread. We'll just put it in there, then we're going to cover it up again for a few more minutes. And then we're going to be putting it in the oven. Okay, the bread is risen in the pan and it's ready to go in the oven. It's going in the oven for about a half hour, I believe, at 400 degrees. I'll check that time to make sure, but this is going to be a delicious loaf of bread in a very short period of time. So I'll see you then. We're going to dump it out of the pan at this point, theoretically. Maybe not dump. Too hot to be grabbing that pan. Now in theory, this time I can dump it out. There we go. And that's our loaf of bread. Now we're going to just let that cool for quite a while. So you can see that's how easy it is to make bread. It's really not tough. It takes some time. I started this probably 9:30 this morning, and it's 1:30 in the afternoon now. Thanks for watching. Now go make some bread. It's not magic.